2 days passed since the pack returned to Earth, the familiar surroundings of the workshop grounding them after their long stay in Alfheim. The air was cooler here, with the sharp tang of pine trees and the distant hum of the forest surrounding the compound. Despite the comforting familiarity, tension lingered in the air. Gunnar's silence weighed heavily on everyone. Though his strength was returning, his spirit remained fractured. Each day, Clara or another member of the pack would pull him from his bed, forcing him to confront the world outside. But Gunnar remained distant, his thoughts always elsewhere, his one good eye scanning the horizon as though he expected the darkness to reach him here, too. On the third day, it was Bianca's turn to walk with him. Her protective nature and nurturing demeanour made her the perfect companion for Gunnar as he silently trudged through the forest path behind the workshop. She walked beside him, her usual warmth tempered by an understanding of the pain he carried. They walked in silence for a long time before Bianca spoke. "You don't have to say anything," she began, her voice gentle. "But I'm here if you want to. We're all here." Gunnar said nothing, his gaze fixed on the ground ahead of them. His steps were slow, but they were getting steadier with each passing day. The physical wounds were healing. He could feel the strength returning to his muscles, the grip in his remaining hand firm once more. But the scars beneath the surface ran deeper, and those were harder to face. After a few minutes, Bianca broke the silence again. "You know, this forest reminds me of home. There's something about the smell of pine and earth that takes me back." She smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Whenever I felt lost, I'd come out here, cook something for the pack. We're family, Gunnar. You've got us." Bianca's words hung in the air, but Gunnar remained silent, though his steps slowed slightly. He heard her. He always heard them, but he didn't know how to respond. Not yet. Tatse. Later that afternoon, Desera took him on another walk, this time leading him to the edge of a cliff that overlooked the dense forests below. The air was crisp, and the wind brushed against their faces, carrying the scent of earth and pine. Desera, with her mechanical leg clanking softly against the ground, moved with a kind of grace that came from years of fighting and adapting to her new reality. Gunnar noticed it, the way she carried herself despite her own loss, the way she didn't flinch at the weight of her prosthetic, or how it had never slowed her down. It was a stark reminder that he wasn't the only one who had suffered. Desera leaned against a rock, staring out at the horizon, her sniper-trained eyes scanning the distance. She didn't speak for a long while, letting the silence settle between them before finally saying, "Losing something, a part of yourself, it's like having to relearn how to live." Gunnar glanced at her, his brow furrowed. It was the first time since they'd returned that someone had addressed the truth so plainly. Desera didn't dance around it, didn't sugarcoat it. "I know what it's like," she continued, tapping her mechanical leg lightly. "You think losing this didn't change me. It did. But I had to find my way back. It took time. And it will take you time too." Gunnar clenched his remaining fist, feeling the weight of her words. He still felt like half of who he once was, physically, mentally. He didn't know how to reconcile that with who he needed to be for the pack. "Losing doesn't mean we stop," Desera added quietly, her gaze still fixed on the horizon. "It just means we fight harder. I'm still here, Gunnar, and so are you." For the first time since they'd started walking, Gunnar felt something shift inside him. Desera's words cut through the haze, though he still couldn't find the strength to respond. But he nodded, just slightly, and Desera noticed it was enough. The next morning, Jewel took him to the clearing near the workshop where they used to train together. She carried Minerva on her shoulder, the great horned owl's sharp eyes scanning the area, much like Desera's had the day before. Jewel had always been the calming presence in the pack, her wisdom guiding them through even the darkest moments. But today she was quiet, observing Gunnar as he moved through the clearing. "You've come a long way," Jules said finally, her voice soft. "But I know you're not where you need to be." Gunnar stopped walking, turning to look at her. He could see the concern in her eyes, the way she watched him as though she was trying to figure out how to help him. "I'm not where I need to be," he said quietly, the first words he'd spoken in days. His voice was hoarse, and it hurt to admit it. Jewel nodded slowly, her expression softening. "I know. But you don't have to rush it. We're not asking for you to be whole again overnight." She stepped closer, placing a hand gently on his remaining arm. "What we're asking is that you don't give up. Not on us. Not on yourself. You've been through hell, Gunnar. We all have. But we need you. The pack needs you." Gunnar's jaw clenched, his mind racing with thoughts he hadn't yet been able to put into words. He had been their leader for so long, the one they all looked to for strength and direction. But now, with an eye and an arm lost, with his mind fractured, he didn't know if he could still be that person. "I don't know how to come back from this," he said, his voice barely audible. Jules' eyes softened even more, and Minerva let out a soft hoot from her shoulder. "You don't have to do it alone," she whispered. "We're here to help you find the way. All you have to do is keep walking." The words sank into him like a slow burn, and for the first time in what felt like ages, Gunnar felt a flicker of something. Hope, perhaps. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it was there, and it was enough to keep him moving forward, one step at a time. The pack continued to take turns walking with Gunnar over the next few days. Each of them knew that healing, true healing, took time, and though Gunnar remained distant, each walk seemed to chip away at the walls he had built around himself bit by bit. But none of them rushed him. They knew he needed time, and they were willing to give him that. Because in the end, they weren't just a pack of warriors. They were a family. And family never left one of their own behind, even in the darkest of times. As the days passed, Gunnar's physical strength began to return, but the emotional and mental wounds still festered beneath the surface. Despite the walks with the pack, the weight of his losses clung to him, threatening to pull him back into the darkness. The eye patch covering his left eye and the empty sleeve where his arm had once been were constant reminders of what he had lost, and every glance in the mirror felt like a battle he wasn't ready to fight. Eli had been watching him closely from a distance ever since they had returned to the workshop. She knew him better than most, having fought beside him countless times. She could see the burden he carried and how it ate away at him. It was late in the evening when Eli finally decided to approach Gunnar. He was sitting in the small forge area of the workshop, staring at the embers of the fire as they glowed faintly in the dim light. His face was as unreadable as ever, but Eli knew he was lost in thought. She took a deep breath, gripping the small package in her hands. This was something she had been working on in secret ever since they returned from Alfheim. A gift, but more than that, a tool she hoped would help him begin to reclaim some of the strength he had lost. "Gunnar." Eli's voice was soft but firm as she stepped into the forge, her presence breaking through the silence. Gunnar looked up slowly, his remaining eye focused on her as she approached. He didn't say anything, just nodded in acknowledgement. Eli moved to stand beside him, placing the package down on the workbench in front of him. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence between them thick with unspoken words. Finally, Eli broke it. "I've been working on something," she said quietly, her eyes flickering between Gunnar and the package on the table. "Something for you." Gunnar frowned slightly, his brow furrowing as he glanced at the package. "What is it?" Eli hesitated for a moment, her fingers brushing over the package before she slowly began to unwrap it. As the cloth fell away, it revealed a sleek, metallic prosthetic arm, a masterpiece of both engineering and alchemy, imbued with the magic of the starlight gem that she had carefully woven into its design. Gunnar's eye widened slightly as he looked at the prosthetic. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The arm was not just a replacement, it was an upgrade. It was crafted from a combination of lightweight metal alloys, enchanted to be stronger than steel, and designed to be fully integrated with his nervous system. But it was the hidden feature that Eli was most proud of. She gently lifted the arm, turning it over to reveal a small mechanism built into the wrist. "There's something else," Eli said softly, her voice filled with quiet pride. "I've incorporated a dagger into the design. It's retractable, hidden inside the forearm. When you flex your wrist backward, it will extend. A quick movement forward, and it retracts back inside." Gunnar stared at the prosthetic, his expression unreadable as he processed what Eli was saying. He reached out with his remaining hand, his fingers brushing over the smooth surface of the metal. "It's made from the same material as the Starbreaker," Eli continued, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "It's strong, durable. I've enhanced it with some of the same magic I used on your rifle. This arm. It's not just to replace what you lost. It's a weapon, an extension of you." Gunnar was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the prosthetic as the weight of what Eli had done sank in. The dagger hidden inside the arm was a stroke of genius. It meant he wouldn't be unarmed even if he lost his primary weapon in battle. It was more than a replacement. It was a symbol of resilience, of adapting to the pain and loss and turning it into something stronger. Eli stood quietly beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew Gunnar wasn't one for grand gestures of gratitude, but that wasn't why she had done this. She had built this for him because she believed in him, because she knew that even though he was hurting, he was still the leader they needed. Finally, Gunnar spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "Why?" Eli blinked, taken aback by the question. "Why?" "Why would you go through all this trouble?" Gunnar asked, his eye lifting to meet hers. I'm broken, Eli. Half a man. What's the point?" Eli's chest tightened and she shook her head. "No, Gunnar, you're not broken. You've lost things, important things, but that doesn't make you less. You've fought for us, for this pack, more times than I can count. You've bled for us, and we'll fight for you too. That's what this is. It's not about replacing what you lost. It's about giving you back the strength to keep going." Gunnar's gaze softened, the weight of her words settling into his mind. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he allowed himself to feel something other than despair. He looked at Eli, truly looked at her, and saw the unwavering belief in her eyes. "You made this for me," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Eli nodded, her expression firm. "Because I know you're not done fighting. You're still the alpha, Gunnar. You're still our leader." Gunnar's eye drifted back to the prosthetic, his hand trembling slightly as he lifted it from the table. He turned it over in his hands, examining the intricate design, the hidden blade that would become part of him. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Eli stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You don't have to be ready right now," she said softly, "but when you are, we'll be here. And this," she gestured to the prosthetic, "will be here, waiting for you." Gunnar swallowed hard, nodding slowly. He wasn't ready yet. But maybe, just maybe, this was a step toward healing, toward reclaiming what he had lost. And for now, that was enough. As the silence settled between them, Eli turned and quietly left the room, leaving Gunnar alone with the prosthetic. He stared at it for a long while, his mind racing with thoughts of the battles yet to come. One day he would wear this, one day he would fight again. And when he did, he would be ready. The air in the workshop was still as the pack rested. Gunnar, finally exhausted after a day of strained walks and forced interaction with the pack, lay in bed, his breathing steady but shallow. The quiet of the night surrounded him, the only sounds the gentle creaking of the wood in the wind and the soft howls of the wolves in the distance. But even in sleep, Gunnar couldn't escape the battles that raged in his mind. His face, which had grown increasingly gaunt since his return, twisted in discomfort as he muttered words too low for anyone to hear. Ashley had been keeping a quiet vigil, sitting in the corner of the room, half asleep herself. She had insisted on taking her turn to watch over him, though Gunnar had assured her he didn't need a babysitter. Despite his protests, they all knew he wasn't the same man who had left for the Demon King's realm. And Ashley, ever vigilant, refused to leave his side. Her eyes fluttered open as she heard Gunnar's voice rise above a whisper. "Darren," he muttered, his voice thick with emotion. "Darren, watch your back." Ashley frowned, her mind racing as she tried to place the name. She had heard Gunnar mention Darren before, years ago, back when they first began to work together. Darren Smith, his old army buddy. The two of them had been close, like brothers, Gunnar had once said. They had survived some of the roughest combat tours together in Korea, Iraq, and Kuwait. She sat up straighter, leaning forward as Gunnar continued to talk in his sleep. "Stay low, Darren. Keep them off us. We'll make it out." His words came out in jagged fragments, and Ashley's heart clenched. She recognized that tone, the voice of someone lost in a memory of a battlefield long past. After a moment, Gunnar's muttering stopped, his body sinking back into the bed as his mind retreated into deeper sleep. But the name lingered in Ashley's mind. She stood up, her thoughts racing. Darren Smith. Why would Gunnar be dreaming about him now? Had Gunnar reached out to him recently? Ashley quietly left the room, heading down the hallway to where her phone was resting on a side table. If Darren was on Gunnar's mind, there had to be a reason. She unlocked her phone, her fingers moving quickly across the screen as she pulled up Sophia's contact. If anyone could track someone down, it was Sophia. The phone rang twice before Sophia's voice, clear and crisp, came through the line. "Ashley? What's going on?" Sophia asked, her tone concerned. "Hey, Sophia, I've got a question for you," Ashley began, her voice quiet but filled with urgency. "Do you remember Gunnar ever mentioning a guy named Darren Smith? They served together in the army." There was a pause on the other end as Sophia processed the request. "Yeah, I think he did, years ago. They were close, weren't they? Like brothers?" "Exactly," Ashley replied. "I just overheard Gunnar talking about him in his sleep. I think something's going on with Darren. Can you track him down?" "I have a feeling Gunnar might have reached out to him before all of this." Sophia's voice was already filled with determination. "I'll see what I can find. Give me a few minutes." Ashley nodded, pacing back and forth as she waited for Sophia to work her magic. Her mind raced with possibilities. Darren might be exactly what Gunnar needed. Someone from his past who could ground him. Someone who had been through the same hells and come out the other side. After a few minutes, her phone buzzed again, Sophia's name lighting up the screen. "I found him," Sophia said, her voice triumphant. "Darren Smith. He just retired from the army about a month ago. He's living out in Washington State. Get this, Gunnar reached out to him recently with a job offer." Ashley's heart skipped a beat. "A job offer? For what?" "To maintain the jet," Sophia replied. "Gunnar wanted him to come work for them and oversee the new aircraft, but I don't think Darren ever responded." Ashley took a deep breath, her mind swirling with possibilities. "Did Darren ever believe in, well, the things we deal with?" Sophia let out a soft chuckle. "Not at all. From what I found, Darren's the type of guy who deals in facts. No nonsense. He probably doesn't believe in the supernatural or other realms. If Gunnar asked him to get involved with us, Darren might have thought he was joking." Ashley frowned. That could complicate things, but she had a feeling Darren would be more important than they realized. "I think we need to reach out to him," Ashley said firmly. "Gunnar's struggling, Sophia. I think seeing Darren again might help." "I'll send you his contact information," Sophia replied. "But be careful, Ashley. If Darren doesn't believe in any of this, it could be a tough sell." Ashley nodded, though Sophia couldn't see her. "We'll figure it out. Thanks, Sophia." After ending the call, Ashley took a deep breath, staring down at the contact information Sophia had sent her. Darren had recently retired from the army. Gunnar had reached out to him with a job offer to maintain their new jet, but it didn't seem like Darren had ever followed up. She didn't blame him. From what she could gather, Darren didn't believe in the things they dealt with. Supernatural forces, other realms, and she didn't plan on diving into that part of the story just yet. Instead, she'd tell him the truth, just enough to get him to listen. She hit the call button and raised the phone to her ear, her heart pounding as the phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times before a gruff voice finally answered. Darren Smith. Ashley took a steadying breath. Hi, Darren. My name's Ashley. I work with Gunnar. There was a brief pause on the other end, followed by a shift in tone. Gunnar, haven't heard from him in a while. What's this about? Ashley's grip tightened on the phone. Gunnar was injured during a classified mission. He's not doing well. He lost his arm and his eye while in combat with a hostile entity. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line before Darren's voice came through, rough with disbelief. He lost his arm? And his eye? Ashley nodded, even though he couldn't see her. Yeah, it was bad, Darren. He was nearly killed. He survived, but it's taken a toll on him. He's not just dealing with the physical injuries, he's shut himself off. We're worried about him. Darren was quiet for a long time, the sounds of him moving around faintly heard in the background. Finally, he spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. What the hell happened out there? What kind of mission was this? Ashley chose her words carefully. It's classified, Darren, but I can tell you this. It was a battle unlike anything we've ever faced before. Gunnar came out of it alive, but not without a cost. He's been pushing everyone away, and I think you're the one person who might be able to reach him. Darren let out a frustrated sigh. He reached out to me a while back, offered me a job, said he needed someone to maintain a jet. I didn't think much of it. I didn't think it was this serious. It was serious, Ashley replied gently. And now more than ever, I think Gunnar needs you here. He's not just our leader, Darren. He's our family. And right now, he's slipping away. Another long pause. When Darren finally spoke, there was a quiet resolve in his voice. Where is he? Ashley felt a surge of relief. I'll send you the details, and we can send the jet to pick you up. It'll be faster than any commercial flight. The jet, huh? Darren sounded surprised, but there was a small chuckle in his voice. All right, Ashley, send it over. I'll be ready. Thank you, Darren, Ashley said, her voice soft with gratitude. I think this could make all the difference. I'll be there as soon as I can, Darren replied, his voice firm. Gunnar's my brother. I'll do whatever it takes to get him back on his feet. As Ashley ended the call, a wave of hope washed over her. Darren was on his way. And maybe, just maybe, with the help of his old friend, Gunnar could start fighting his way back from the darkness that had gripped him. But for now they would wait and hope that this was the first step toward bringing Gunnar out of the void that was slowly consuming him.